and intentions that we have to dive into healing foods, the foods that we love, the foods that our body loves. Take a nice deep inhale and exhale. Welcome, welcome. Thank you, ladies. Thank you. Thank you. I'm Gillian Bell of the Urban Yoga Foundation. I'm here with two of my closest friends and amazing teachers. They work with me with Urban Yoga. They work in the community. And we're just talking about healing foods and just coming and having a conversation with each other. So I'm going to let these ladies introduce themselves. I'm going to first introduce Shabnam Ahmed. Shabnam, please let everyone know who you are, what you do, and anything else you want to share.
Thanks, Gillian. So my name is Shabnam, and I am a nutritionist. I'm a registered dietitian, also a certified diabetes educator, and most recently a 200-hour yoga teacher. And I have known Gillian since 2011 when I saw a Groupon for Urban Yoga Foundation and went over and took a class, and just it was love at first sight, and I knew this was my space and this is where I wanted to practice. And our relationship has grown from teacher-client to getting to work together, and I used to do nutrition workshops at her old space on 152nd Street. So I practice as a dietitian. I counsel patients. I do nutrition workshops. I work for a federally qualified health center on 145th in Amsterdam in Upper Manhattan, and counsel people on lifestyle change. I see a lot of people with diabetes, pre-diabetes, people trying to lose weight, gain weight, gastrointestinal issues. It really kind of runs the gamut. More and more, I'm pleased to see that I've been getting more and more patients coming in interested in a plant-based diet, which has become more popular with recent documentaries and other sort of media attention. Recently, as I said, I just completed my 200-hour registered yoga teacher training, and I've been practicing for many years. And part of my inspiration to do the training was that I really wanted to integrate it more and more into my nutrition practice. And it started a few years back as I started doing more teaching clients tools and tips for mindful eating. So working with someone on really kind of tuning into your inner feelings of satiety and hunger, which as most adults we've kind of lost. Kids tend to be much better at it than adults are. We often eat for all sorts of other reasons, because we're sad, because we're happy, because we're bored, and everything in between. So that's been a sort of recent development in my own counseling, in my own personal life and practice. And I'm looking forward to seeing more and more where it goes. And myself, I've, over the course of the teacher training, I wasn't planning on doing this, but I switched to really following a pescatarian diet. And in the words of one of my instructors, it was just something that the body demanded. After a time, I wasn't looking for it. I wasn't trying to make a change, but all of a sudden my body just started kind of rejecting meat. And I'm not militant about it. I still will have some occasionally, but I just don't have the desire for it anymore. So that's been, just on a personal note, an interesting change in terms of, mindfulness, yoga, meditation, and eating habits, and how they all kind of meld together in my own personal life. So I'll leave it there and pass the microphone on to Boo.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for sharing. Our next person is Boo. Boo has been working with me for a number of years as well, and I'm very excited to share this platform with her. Please, Boo, tell us a little bit about yourself, what you're doing, and your love for healing foods.
Thank you, Gillian. It's just always an honor to be part of the Urban Yoga Foundation community and family. And everything I do, it's so amazing when I work with you. So thank you for that. And I'm so grateful to be here. So for me, I would say I'm a plant-based chef with a focus on raw, but I do plant-based. And I'm an entrepreneur and a lifetime vegan from adulthood. And I'm a yoga teacher also and practitioner for most of my life. And when I look at nutrition, I look at it from a holistic standpoint. And so many times people don't think about they don't put much thought into how they get illnesses or how they eat when they're eating unhealthy. But as soon as they start to choose to eat in a healthy way, they start raising 101 questions. How am I going to get this? And how am I going to get my K? And how am I going to get my A? When they were eating poorly, they didn't think about any of that, but they still got through and survived on nutrient deficient food. As soon as you add plant-based foods to your diet, you get an array of nutrients, and you really don't need to so much focus in on which nutrients you're getting, as long as you eat the rainbow of the plant-based world. And if you look at illnesses, there are very few illnesses that come from eating vegetables. I don't know, maybe you'll be able to tell us a few, but there's a skew of illnesses that come from eating animal products and the byproducts of animals, a skew of them. The main thing you will suffer from a plant-based diet is perhaps you might become nutrient deficient in one particular area, but with a little adjustment, it can be fixed. And it's so much better for the environment, for our well-being, our performance. And I'm not saying that we all have to be plant-based, but at least 50% of your plate should be plant-based. I choose to be 100% plant-based in summer. Actually, I'm 100% plant-based, I'm sorry. In summer, I'm mainly raw, fruits, vegetables, and nuts. And then when it's winter, we're not meant to live in cold environments, so I might add a lentil soup if I need to, or a miso soup, something warming and comforting. And so many of us are unaware that we are unaware. And when we start living and eating consciously, life starts to happen for us rather than to us. When we eat unconsciously, when we live unconsciously and speak unconsciously, we're not in control of what's happening. But as soon as we bring conscious awareness to our life, it begins to unfold as we want it to. And success happens when your actions are bigger than your excuses. And you can choose to start thriving rather than surviving. And we're here to help you find your love for healing foods. And it's about taking the holistic approach. Where's your mind? Where's your lifestyle? Where are your relationships? It's all of that. And then it's how you decide what you choose to put in your mouth, based on how you're living your life and showing up in the world.
Thank you. I think the next phase I'd like to talk about is some of the things both of you really believe in when it comes to the love you have for healing foods. I mean, staples that you can talk about, each of you, that work for you. Maybe we can have a little conversation about that. Cuisine, staples, anything you think you want to share that is definitely in your pantry or in your cupboard or in your refrigerator you shop for all the time.
Sure. So in terms of staples that I always have on hand, you know, I always have a variety of pretty much every type of nut and seed. I'm the total, I guess, nutritionist cliche. I've definitely had people come over to my apartment and say, "What is this? A bunch of bird food in your fridge?" But, you know, it's incredible how it just adds flavor to a meal. It adds nutritional value to a meal. It satiates you. You know, nuts and seeds have a ton of fiber and protein and healthy fats. And, you know, it can be the difference between, you know, I've had a lot of patients who've switched to a vegan diet. And, you know, if they're not careful about getting a protein source, they often don't feel satiated. And they often find that, you know, they're hungry again in a couple hours, or their energy is lacking. And, you know, there's such a huge variety of, you know, this entire class of foods that can really be wonderfully added into pretty much any kind of cuisine and any kind of food. And it's simple and it doesn't require a lot of preparation. You grab them from the fridge. I keep them in the fridge because they last longer that way. The oils don't turn rancid. And, you know, I'll just crumble them up and throw them on a salad or in a soup or in a pasta or whatever it is I'm making. So I'd say that is one thing that I definitely always have on hand. I love Asian cuisine, and so specifically East Asian cuisine. And so I always have toasted sesame oil in my fridge. I also always have tamari or soy sauce in my fridge. And I often find just a little sprinkle of both of those just adds so much flavor. And, you know, of course, a lot of nutritional benefit too. And there's a sort of, you know, both of the oil and the tamari both have, it's a quality called umami. It was identified as the fifth taste, and there was no English word for it. So umami is a Japanese word, and it's the word that's given to describe a taste that's basically savory. And it's something that really makes us feel satisfied. It gives a sort of roundness and gives body to the food we're eating. So that to me is another classic thing I like to keep in my pantry. And then I go back and forth. Sometimes I have, this is another classic umami food, is Parmesan cheese. So if you're following a vegan diet, this wouldn't necessarily fall in. But the other one I often keep in my pantry is nutritional yeast, which actually has a very similar profile. And for someone who does want to be purely plant-based, that can be a really nice substitute. And a little sprinkle of that on a food really gives a sort of salty, satisfying body to the dish, I find. So those are a couple of my favorites.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing. So Boo, talk to me about your superfood love fest.
So greens.
Or healing food, forgive me.
Yeah, my healing foods and my everyday foods. Not a single day goes by when I don't eat a green. And my preferred greens are microgreens in the form of sprouts, sunflower sprouts. Microgreens are so high in protein and they're so tasty and really, really delicious. And you can eat them as a salad. You can blend them in your smoothies. You can, put them in sauces. There's so many different ways to use them. And then with the microgreens, I'll always add a spinach, kale. Make sure I have a cross section of greens every single day, because for a vegan, that's where we're getting our chlorophyll and a bulk of our nutrients from the greens, the dark leafy greens. And then every day I have seeds. So my main seed is flaxseed in the form of crackers. And I always soak all my seeds to release the inhibitors, and that helps us with the digestion. So a really easy seed for everybody to incorporate is chia seed. You should soak it always, at least for 1 hour, but it will quadruple or more its size soaked in 1 hour. And it's great for thickening up soups, it's great for thickening up smoothies, or you can just add it to water, and then once it's rehydrated, you add some almond milk and some berries, and you've got a really delicious chia pudding. It's that simple. My go-to seasonings are Bragg's. I sometimes use the amino acids or a Himalayan salt. And then apple cider vinegar. I have that every single day because it's alive. It's got a lot of microorganisms in it that are very good for our gut and help our gut bacteria. And then my other main go-tos every single day are juices, whether it's green juice or red juice with beets, or green juice, celery juice is amazing, cucumber. I buy those sometimes just from Trader Joe's. They're like $2.99 a bottle. It's cheaper than me buying the greens and taking the time to do them myself. The quality is really good. They have a green juice and a red juice, and I really love those. And I always, lemon. Lemon goes in everything because lemon is a perfect pH balancer. So I find as a chef and in my personal life, you need to feel satiated. You need to have a fat, a sugar, and a salt in whatever you're eating. And as long as you include those elements in anything you prepare, you will be satiated from it. And we feel emptiness when we eat empty calories. You can drink a green juice, which doesn't have much density, and because of all the micronutrients in it, and it's got a sweetness to it, it's got a saltiness to it, and it has the fats from the vegetables, then you become satiated from it. So I would say greens are my main go-to foods. Thank you.
Thank you.
And Boo, can I ask you?
Thank you so much for sharing.
Yeah.
So when I think about healing food, yes.
I was going to ask Boo a question. So with your greens, do you always have them fresh, or do you ever do frozen?
The only thing I do frozen are green peas. However, if people cannot get them fresh, frozen are okay. Yeah.
I do a combination, but I'm always curious to hear what chefs do.
Yeah, or as fresh as possible, everything.
So I was just thinking about the steps it takes to really understand all the avenues of healing foods. I mean, you have juicing, you have raw foods, you have freeze-dried powders of moringa and other superfoods. Can we have a little conversation on that love of preparation, or what it means to people are buying these fresh vegetables and maybe they don't have time to finish eating them all, and how they switch over to some of the other ways to have juices and powders and freeze-dried things. Like, what kind of regimens and what kind of support would you give to people, and what's your regimen when it comes to those kinds of ideas on navigating the road to nutrition that way, whether it's fresh foods or juices or powders or other supplements?
So I would say, when it comes to counseling other people, I often hear this complaint or sort of concern, challenge people face in terms of, as they're switching to a more plant-based diet, they're eating more fruits and vegetables, this concern about waste and spoilage. They buy a bunch, people like to buy in bulk. They don't like making multiple trips to the grocery store, but then some of it spoils, and what do they do, and how do they use it up right before it goes bad? And so smoothies and juices tend to be my kind of go-to recommendation. It's simple. It doesn't require a lot of thought or planning. You know, if people aren't used to the flavor of a green juice or just a pure vegetable juice, which, you know, if you never had one before, it can be kind of bitter to start with for people as their taste buds get adjusted. I always recommend putting in some fruits to sweeten it up a little bit. So that's usually my kind of go-to first recommendation. The other thing that I didn't mention before as I was talking about pantry staples was the large collection of spices I like to use. So that's something I always have on hand. It's something that's very part of my cultural heritage. My family's Indian, and so I grew up having a lot of spices always in our home, and my mom cooked with a lot of spices. And, you know, that's something that I will also kind of encourage people to incorporate in terms when it comes to sort of a healing food or superfood that's, you know, versatile, easy, simple. People often get scared by them if they're not used to cooking with spices or using them in their foods because they're not sure if they're going to make the food taste bad or if it's going to be too like spicy hot. And what, you know, you sometimes have to coach people who haven't really worked with spices before is very few spices actually have that fire heat to them. There's only a few that actually do. People forget that something like cinnamon is a spice. And so just kind of encouraging people to, you know, every month, go to the grocery store, go to the spice aisle, pick a new one you might want to try that month. And then talking about different ways to use it. And sometimes it involves hot cooking, and sometimes it's, you know, add some cinnamon on top of your oatmeal, or throw a little bit of turmeric into your green juice, or, you know, whatever it is. So that's another thing that I'll work with people on. In terms of supplements and that kind of thing, that for me is something I recommend on a very case-by-case, individualized basis. I do work with some supplements, but I can't say there's any supplement that I think every person should be taking, because everyone's body is different, and everyone has different, you know, health issues, concerns, challenges, goals. So it really depends on the person as far as that goes.
Thank you. Pooh, do you want to add anything to this conversation?
Yes. You mentioned in regard to the smoothie tasting bitter, cilantro is a great herb to add to green smoothies, and it adds a really delicious sweetness to it, and it's very nutritious. And believe it or not, parsley is also so highly nutritious, and it adds a great flavor and sweetness to green juices. But adding bananas and fruits is also helpful, but not as beneficial it adds more sugar. But if that's the way you're going to drink it and take it down, then go ahead. In regard to the life of foods, I would say if you buy in bulk and you see it starting to spoil, you can make a preparation and then freeze it. And especially if you mix it with a fat or a nut, it freezes like not so it gets full of water. If something has high water content, then it gets very icy. But if you kind of prepare it before you freeze it, then you can still make use of it rather than letting it spoil. And summer is a great time to do that with fruits. When I see good prices on berries and strawberries, I buy them up and I just freeze them. I put them straight in the freezer as soon as I buy them, because I know I've got too many. I do try to add turmeric and ginger to most things, especially sauces and dressings. I add a little bit of ginger in my smoothies. And then as a plant-based and vegan, I make a point of regularly adding B12 and vitamin D especially in winter. In summer, I don't do vitamin D because I love being out in the sunshine. But in winter, I don't get out enough in the sunshine, and so I do vitamin D and always B12. And I believe even meat eaters should do B12 because the quality of the meat and some of the way that they eat processed meats, I don't think that we're necessarily, as a population, getting B12. One more thing I'd like to add in regard to superfoods, I'm a big proponent of freeze-dried foods because they really help me when I'm traveling and when I'm on the go, when I'm doing my entrepreneurial work and I'm in the office and I'm in meetings. I can put some superfoods in a cup and just add some coconut water and shake it all up. And I'm very particular about the companies that I go with. If people want to know that, more about that, we can give you more information about the companies that we recommend. And one other thing in regard to kind of superfoods is it's kind of related to what Shabana was saying about the herbs and spices. And I like to use them in therapeutic oil grade. And I add those like cinnamon and lime. I will add that to water and drink it. And it's so stimulating to the system and to the mind. It really helps bring alertness. And I think the herbs can definitely help children if we're very, very careful with them and don't give them too much. They can really help them with their concentration and thinking in many different ways because they're eating such nutrient-deficient diets right now. And so they need all the stimulation they can get at home. Well done, Gillian.
Thank you. I'm looking at some of the, just to segue into answering some of the questions. I think they're saying, Boo, I think because you're logged in as a watcher, we're hearing an echo. Do you hear an echo for you, Boo? Just so you know that. That's one question that came up.
No,
another question is, Jamie Murphy, I've been living off avocado toast to peanut butter toast and protein shakes. Don't know how to cook anything. Wild cod, I think, and garlic and lemon and stovetop chopped sweet potatoes going to mix with some kale. So Jamie Murphy's doing that tonight. She's listening and cooking dinner, so she's being a little unresponsive and apologizing for that. Isaac says hello. I have an echo in my audio and I can't even hear myself, so sorry about that. So many people are filled with gratitude. We have a question about watercress greens. We have a question, the nutritional facts of watercress. We have a question about getting your water from fruits instead of drinking so much water, like the hydration of fruits going in the system a little bit easier for the body. And we also have a question of celery juice and gut health and stomach health. So do you ladies want to elaborate a little bit on those questions that people are asking so we can answer some questions? And if anyone has any other questions, please type them in so we can get them answered.
So in terms of the watercress, watercress has kind of made a little bit of a resurgence recently in this country. It's been popular in a lot of East Asian cuisines for a very long time. I know in England it's always been popular as a sort of sandwich filler. And I recently, well not recently, this is probably about 3-4 years ago, there was a study that came out, if you just want to go with a straight hard science, looking at the nutritional breakdown of all these different fruits and vegetables and then giving them a score based on the amount of different nutrients different foods contain. So everyone thinks kale is the #1 green vegetable to consume. And kale has gotten a lot of attention in the last, 10 years or so. But watercress actually topped this list. And it is by far the most nutrient dense of any vegetable that we know of, or something that was tested on this list. So, it is, what that basically means is that it not only contains a large variety of different nutrients, at least the ones that humans have identified, because there's all sorts of nutrients that science has not yet identified that are in our foods, but also contains large quantities of all those different nutrients. So it's super high in vitamin A, which people might be familiar with. It's found in a lot of orange vegetables also. It's good for your eyesight. Vitamin K, which is important for bone health and blood clotting. High in calcium, also important for bone health. Potassium, which most Americans do not get enough of. And potassium is very important for health. People always talk about how you have to watch your sodium intake when you have high blood pressure. There's actually not enough attention paid to the fact that you also need to be getting enough potassium into your diet. And so watercress would be a source of that. It's also part of a family of vegetables called cruciferous vegetables. Other vegetables in this family would be things like kale, cauliflower, cabbage, Brussels sprouts, collard greens, and this family of vegetables is really high in these sulfur-based compounds that have been studied for their anti-cancer effects. So they've been found in studies to actually basically sort of seek out cancer cells in the body and basically kill them. They neutralize carcinogens that humans are exposed to. So there's a lot of really important health benefits. And interestingly, they find that these nutrients are actually more available to the body if the plant has been cut or chewed. So ideally, I listened to this whole podcast about this. When you get your green vegetables, before you start cooking them, or if you're eating them raw, before you start eating them, you actually want to chop them up and let them sit for like 15 minutes. And that action of either by hand tearing them up or using a knife to chop them up will actually trigger the vegetables to start reacting with oxygen and creating compounds in the vegetables that are more bioavailable, i.e. the body can absorb them better. So that's just kind of a interesting little tidbit about green vegetables in general. Other questions? Celery, gut health,
Water.
and water. So it's the celery juice and gut health. I'll quickly just say, could it be helpful for gut health issues? Potentially. In my experience, gut health issues are so varied. It depends what your gut health issue is. And it might be helpful, it might not be. So I think I would need to know a little bit more about what that person's specific issue is to answer that question. In terms of water from fruits, you'd be hard pressed to probably meet all your fluid needs just from eating fruits or eating raw vegetables. Consume some water in its plain form during the day, but there's certainly a huge advantage to meeting your fluid needs from the water that's found in fresh fruits and vegetables, because not only are you getting water, but you're getting all these electrolytes, you're getting minerals and vitamins, you're getting fiber, you're getting something called they're not vitamins, they're not minerals, they're something else that's found in plants that science sort of has been paying a lot of attention to in the last 10 years or so. So those sulfur-based compounds in the green vegetables, those are phytonutrients. So, drinking plain water in, New York City, having the best tap water in the country, is a good thing. But if you can complement that with water from these fresh fruits and vegetables, you get a whole host of other stuff too. It's, the original vitamin water, not that, bottle stuff you get in the store that's full of sugar.
Thank you.
Boo, did you want to add anything?
I loved what you said about preparing the kale before you hopefully don't cook it. I'd love to hear people eating it raw. But that brings to mind my massaged kale salad. Oh my gosh, when you massage kale with your seasonings, people think it's cooked because we break it down that much. It's equivalent to macerating it in the mouth. You massage the greens. You can do that with collard greens and release all the nutrients. It absorbs all the herbs and the spices, and it tastes amazing, and you feel amazing when you eat it. So that I really liked what you said about that. My feedback about the water is that I feel how much water you drink is relative to the diet that you're eating. Because if someone is eating a heavily cooked, very dense diet, then they're going to need to drink a lot of pure water. However, if someone's eating a high, a plant-based diet full of fruits and vegetables, like myself, for instance, sometimes I'll go a day without drinking water because I've taken in so much water in my juices, in my fruits, and in my vegetables. And I think the person asked about the quality of drinking, fresh water versus your water from fruits and vegetables. And I feel there's an even balance there because, like you said earlier, the minerals that you get from plant and fruit water are very valuable. But also, we're made up of 60% water, so we do need pure water as well. And our digestive system needs water. So the water question is very relative to your lifestyle. But on average, you should drink half your weight in ounces of water. And then I'll touch on the celery question. I think that came about because there's a craze with Anthony Williams. He's created the celery juice diet. And I'm on that bandwagon because I do intermittent fasting. And if anyone doesn't know what that is, it's where you stop eating at a certain time of day in the evening, and then you don't eat for at least 10 hours or 12 hours until the next day. Now, at least 8 hours of that you should be sleeping, so you've only got like 2 hours either side. But sometimes I'll take it to 16 hours and just have an 8-hour window when I'm eating. And so when you're intermittent fasting, you drink your lemon water, you drink your celery juice, you drink your green juice, and you fill up on these phytonutrients and minerals. And what happens is in the morning, we are breaking fast. So when we're breaking fast, we don't need to eat a heavy meal. And intermittent fasting, drinking juices and water and having pH balanced lemon, this all helps our body assimilate, and it really helps us with our digestion and our elimination, giving us a very light, free feeling, ready to take in the nutrients of the next day with no dead weight in there. And because once you finish drinking all those juices and waters, you eliminate, and then you're ready to eat. So that's my take on the celery juice is excellent on an empty stomach. And celery, it pulls, it's a cleansing, it's a diuretic, and it pulls a lot of the toxins out of our body. And when it's a diuretic like that and it goes through on an empty stomach, it really helps to clean the system out. And it adds, celery also has a lot of natural sodium in it. It's very high in sodium. But if you have, what's the illness when you have high, when you can't take salt? Hypertension. If you have hypertension, you can still drink celery because it's an organic salt, and it will help balance out your body's salt. Celery juice is amazing. I don't know if it's as amazing as Anthony Williams is claiming, but I look forward to finding out because it's pretty tasty as well.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing all that information. We're really getting a lot of compliments on so many people are learning so much. Jamie Murphy, I don't know if this was addressed. She wanted to know the rule about combining fruit with other foods like dates and nuts, for example, right? We talked about that a little bit. I want to just discuss that in terms of seasonal foods and the importance of seasonal fasting so that we can get the body ready and adjusted to the introduction to new things. You know, there's so many things happening in the environment, and cleansing the body so that the nutrients can really go into the system without fighting so much of the other things that we have to disperse from the liver and the pancreas and urine and all the things that help eliminate waste from the body. I want to just have a little conversation on seasonal foods and seasonal fasting. Can we indulge ourselves for a minute there, ladies?
Sure. So I'll just, to answer Jamie's question, because I don't know if we totally addressed the combination of fruit with other foods. So that's a very Ayurvedic principle. So for anyone who's in the yogi world or familiar with Ayurveda, which is the sort of ancient Indian healing system, that was always kind of one of the dietary guidelines, is you don't want to combine fruit with other foods. You want to eat fruit by itself because it's broken down by the stomach and digested so quickly. And if it's sitting on top of other foods in the stomach, the idea is it's going to start to sort of putrefy. So ideally you want to have fruit before you eat other foods, or in isolation, so like as a snack between meals. So, you know, this is certainly not something that they teach you in, you know, traditional Western nutrition school. And it's certainly not something I ever used to do. If anything, I would often try and have fruit as a dessert after a meal to satisfy my sweet tooth. But I'd say in the last couple of years, it's a change I've made in my own diet where I try and eat fruit first, or have it in isolation. So anyway, and then to move on to what Gillian wanted to talk about in terms of the seasonal eating, you know, I think it's such an important topic, both in terms of nourishing our bodies and also in terms of the environment. You know, we've got ourselves in this kind of crazy system where we're shipping in, you know, asparagus from South America in December, and you know, we're already so disconnected from nature and the seasons, and I think the food we're ingesting has just taken it one step further. And you know, there's a reason for it. People want to be able to eat what they want to be able to eat when they want to be able to eat it. And you know, on the one hand, I suppose you could say it's better that someone's eating asparagus in December that was grown in South America than eating, you know, a bag of Cheetos. But you know, would it be better if they were ingesting something was grown, you know, locally, so probably picked recently, and so the nutritional content was actually higher, and it was something that was, you know, in season during that time of year. So when the body, you're walking outside, you know, let's take a place like New York City where three of us are based. We walk outside, it's 30 degrees, it's cold, your body's kind of used to this cold temperature. Wouldn't it be appropriate to be eating a vegetable that can also serve kinds of temperatures, because this is where, you know, we're also living. So to make sense. So, you know, I try and make a push for seasonal eating whenever I can with people. And, you know, it's also very cost effective. Usually things are much cheaper when you're buying them in season. That asparagus from South America that you're buying in December is not cheap. It's pretty expensive. And so, you know, when I find that when I'm talking to people, that can sometimes be inroads in to sort of accessing that conversation. Most people are pretty practical and concerned about the rising cost of food. And while food is a lot cheaper in this country than it is in a lot of other countries, because of our subsidy system, it's, you know, it's still a big financial barrier for a lot of people, and that's just a reality. And it's not everyone's priority. You know, for myself, I'm a nutritionist. Food is my whole world. I'm willing to sometimes spend more on certain foods, but not everyone is. People have other obligations, and you have to be realistic about that.
Thank you, Shabnam.
We have a saying in the health and wellness industry: you either pay now or you pay later. And paying now is so much more affordable than paying later with your health and medications. So I'm with you, Shabana. The food I eat and put in my body is priceless. It's my health insurance. And I'll go back to the basics of what we were staying on track. So you mentioned food combining. It is my second main principle that I tell anybody. It's essential to healthy digestion and functioning of the body. My first principle is, even if you're eating meat, whatever you're eating, eat a whole food diet. If you can't do anything else, just make sure it's recognizable food. And I take it as far as pasta is overly processed, bread is overly processed. You need to be eating your brown rice, your sweet potatoes, if you're eating cooked food, eating the whole food. Because when it's been processed, when you wet pasta, it's sticky. And if it's a sticky food like that, it's going to stick to your insides. It's a high carbohydrate, and we've manipulated it and done things to it. Same with bread. It's a dough, and it's like glue. And when you do it and eat it, it goes through the system like that. And so if you want to feel light and clean, eat a whole food diet. I eat the whole grain. But the food combining is essential. So when you eat the carbs, eat it more with vegetables than eating it with a high protein or too much fat. Keep the fats with more light greens. So if you're making like a nut, if I'm making a nut meat, I wouldn't combine it with a heavy starch vegetable. We'll combine it with celery and maybe carrots. I do a nut meat with carrots. I more use seeds. And so seeds are a lighter fat than nuts. Nuts are a heavier fat and heavier to digest and on the digestive system, whereas seeds are so nutritional. And that goes back to Shabana's friends saying, oh, you're eating like a bird or you're eating like a rabbit. Well, they're pretty smart, you know, they eat the most nutritious things. Nuts are a luxury. Do not gorge on nuts. If you make a trail mix with some shredded coconut, some sunflower seeds, some goji berries or raisins, that's a really nice combination. And just eat it with a teaspoon. And you don't have to eat with picking up a handful of nuts. And in regard to food combining, do not cook your nuts because you spoil the oils. Once you heat the oils, they become rancid. I'm trying to think, what else were we addressing other than food combining?
Well, the question had been about fruit, combining fruit with other foods.
Fruit, yeah. Fruit should definitely be eaten alone. And even I'll break it down even more, like melons should only be eaten as a singular fruit. Melons are the fastest digesting fruit, especially watermelon. Don't eat it with other things. Don't put sauces on it. People put all kinds of things on watermelon. I see people barbecuing fruit. Don't do that to your fruit. Just eat and enjoy your fruit. And it's got so many benefits, and you'll just lock up your digestion. And when you lock up your digestion, it causes all kinds of gases to happen and indigestion. And that's when you start feeling the rumbling and different things happening. And when you cause a chemical reaction in your stomach or your intestines, that's when you start getting toxic reactions within your gut. And those toxic reactions, while they'll be eliminated, trace elements of them will remain. And it's those trace elements that build up, and over time, we end up with a problem.
You know, Boo, something you mentioned, you just said before when you said, you know, don't grill your fruit, just enjoy your fruit. That is actually the most obvious thing when it comes to seasonal eating. And I tell people, it just tastes so much. You know, and it does taste delicious. You don't even need to do anything to it if it's, you know, if it's fresh and it was grown locally nearby, you know, and picked this morning. And, you know, unfortunately, I think the only way people really experience that is if they actually experience it and they actually taste the food. And, you know, there's been across the country this growth of these farmers markets, which I think is huge. And, you know, I used to take lead workshops where I'd take a group of clients over to the farmers market, and, you know, they usually have stuff cut up for you to try. And, you know, it's just, people had no idea that, you know, an apple could taste like this, or, you know, especially with the fruits. I think people are really surprised by the fruits, or always thought strawberries were kind of tasteless. And that's because they'd always had, you know, grocery store strawberries that are picked when they're unripe and they ripen on the truck and they don't taste like anything. They're just kind of watery and they always have to put sugar on top of them. And then you taste a strawberry that was, you know, grown in New York State in June and picked that morning, and it's like eating candy.
I think, though, that is relative to where someone is at, because when you speak to a smoker, their taste buds are sharp. And when you speak to a heavy coffee drinker, their taste buds are sharp. Their sense of smell is sharp. And so they don't see food in its organic sense. And this is what we're talking about in regard to, you know, working from a holistic perspective. You can put all the good food in your body, but if you're polluting yourself in other ways, it's not going to be as helpful. And so start to clean up your mind so that you can make better choices. And when you make better choices, you start to eat the right things organically. You're like, oh, I smell that strawberry. I want to eat that. Whereas when you're full of pollution, you don't even smell it. You just want the Cheetos, because that's what goes with your beer or your cigarettes. And, you know, I accept everybody where they're at. I'm not passing judgment. I'm just speaking facts of how these different things interact with you. We all have to take responsibility and ownership for our bodies. And in this world, we all have to be accepting and meet people where they're at. And even though I'm considered an extremist in the way I eat, I wasn't always like this. I grew up with an Italian mother and an African father, and we ate a whole array of food. I grew up on a rich Italian diet. And I never thought in a million years I would become vegan or foodist. And so I have no judgment of where people are at, because I know the journey I have been on. And I'm so passionate about it. And I want other people to become passionate about their health and wellness. And I love helping people find their passion. Sorry, I kind of got on a soapbox.
Oh, that's great.
Fine. We're down to our last 8 minutes, and I just want to say thank you so much, ladies, for sharing all this wonderful knowledge. And in 2 minutes each, could you just please have your last thoughts on what you want to share with the audience? And audience, please know that these webinars will be available and online for you to look at and share. And both of these ladies will be sharing some other information in the future on this platform, as well as many others. But to end, please start. Boo, would you like to start with your just a 2-minute closing on what you want to say?
Sure. I'm going to try and keep track. Okay. All right. I see it's 53. So I have a question for you. I want you to identify something non-material that you wish to attain for your health. And then once you've identified it, I want you to check in with where your mental thinking is on that. And meditation is one of the first things I tell people to bring on board, because when we meditate, our subconscious does things and helps us in ways that our brain has no idea of how it's happening. So check in with yourself on that intention that you create. And then number 2, make a commitment to that intention, whatever the intention is, and define it. Number 3, review your current association with your food habit. Because in order to move forward, you have to know where you're at and what needs to change. So keep track of your triggers and know what your reactions are so that you can start finding right action versus reaction. And that includes the way you talk to yourself and how you live your life. And then number 4, what is your motivation? What is going to motivate you to achieve that intention? And one of my friends, she creates boxes and she puts all the positive things in it, pictures, notes, telephone numbers of girlfriends you can call up. Who can help you and support you? Who's your community in helping you achieve what you want for yourself? So find that and make sure you have it so that in hard times you can draw upon it. And then once you have all that in place, identify what your weakness is and learn how best to overcome it. So if you have an illness, you may have a gut issue that you need to balance. Until you sort that out, you can keep putting all this food into you, but you have to correct what your weakest, you're only as strong as your weakest link, right? So you have to identify what your weakest link is and what you will need to do to identify that. And I guess that was 5 tips. I thought I had 6. So the closing question, while bringing love and kindness to everything you do and say, what action, one action, are you willing to do to achieve that intention that you have set for yourself? So I want you to have an intention and an action and know how to achieve it. And it involves so many things. So I think I did that in 3 minutes. Sorry. Thank you. You go, Shabana.
Thank you, Boo. And yeah, it gave everyone just like that was like a how-to guide of, behavior change. So people sign up for sessions with Boo because you'll get, all of that in more detail.
All of us, we're a team.
I think as the dietitian, this maybe science side of me has talked a lot about maybe nutrients in the conversation, but I would like to end with saying that I really do believe that it is just as important. How we eat is just as important as what we eat. And, again, this kind of comes back to a sort of yogic Ayurvedic principle that you could be putting all the sort of similar to what Boo just talked about, you could be putting all the healthy foods in your body that you want. You could be following us, eating tons of greens and, healthy fats and blah, blah, blah. But if you're not eating mindfully, if, your heart is full of anger and stress and sort of destructive emotions, your body's not going to be able to actually incorporate and take any of the goodness from that food and use it in the body the way it needs to be used. So finding a way to really balance out the whole body and approaching your body and your health from a holistic standpoint, where you're not just looking at what are the foods I'm eating and putting into my body, but also where is my mental health at? Where is my spiritual health at? And what can I do to support those different parts of me? That, I believe, is the true path to healing. Food is a very important component, but it is one component. It is not the only one. And so I think, putting it in the context of that when it comes to health and healing. So I think I would end with that.
Thank you, ladies, so much. What an amazing hour of knowledge and presence and just finding our love for healing foods. We're here with the Urban Yoga community. I'm Gillian with Boo and Shabnam. Thank you so much for indulging yourselves in this evening with us. We're going to end in a quiet sit and breath, just setting our intention and digesting what we've shared. Namaste.
Gluten-free is good. Hi. I'm sorry, someone asked about going gluten-free. Yes.
It looks like we may have lost Gillian.
Yeah, I think she was just calling me. Actually.
Oh, I see her. She's calling me. Hi. Are we still live or?
I think so.
Okay.
Hey, are we conferencing? Awesome. Yes. I can. I want to sign out of this